Hello again. This is Abby. Yeah, this is Abby. Yes, I'm filming the same day as I did the other one. Technically, the same night. Because it is 12:22 in the morning. Because I function better late at night. And I also work 2 jobs. And side gigs. Which I do a side gig tomorrow, so I don't know if I'll be able to film actually this whole weekend, because I'm a busy gal. Yeah, but we're back to reading Weyward, Emilia Hart. Today we're going to be reading chapter 2. Yeah, so I decided I probably will just do it by chapter. I know, not a lot of time to make this decision, same night. But I think that's what we're going to do, which means there's about to be a lot of chapters of this. So, luckily, when I am into a book, I read it non-stop. So, I should be able to whip these videos pretty fast. Whoa, that sounds bad. I should be able to whip these videos out pretty fast, if you know what I mean, love. Sorry about the British accent, the poor one at that. I just get quirky sometimes. I'm sorry for rambling. But anyway, Weyward, Emilia Hart, chapter 2. Yeah, let's get started. I'm excited. I got this book like 4 or 5 months ago. So it's been on my cart, which maybe one day I'll show my cart. I have a cart and a bookshelf because I have a book buying problem and a Kindle. And sometimes I read on my phone. I haven't done it in a while, but I got a lot of ways to read more books. And I buy more books because they're like trophies. Even if I've already read them, it's like a reward. Yeah, so chapter 2, looks like we'll be seeing another one of the characters' point of views. This will be Violet, and as a quick refresher, we have Violet, Alpha, and Kate. Kate's from 2019, Alpha's from 1619, and Violet's from 1942. But anyway, back to the book. Here we go. I'm sorry. Violet hated Graham. She absolutely loathed him. Why did he get to study interesting things all day, like science and Latin, and someone called Pythagoras? Pythagoras? I think it's Pythagoras. Anywho, while she was supposed to be content sticking needles through a canvas. The worst part, she reflected as her wool skirt itched against her legs. That sounds miserable. First of all, my sensory issues could never. Was that he got to do all of this in trousers. I feel that if I had to wear a skirt, I would not be a happy camper. I have other words I could use to describe this, but I don't know if they would get flagged. I've never done this before. But, yeah, would not want to wear a skirt all day 24/7. Well, not 24/7. I'm just going to be quiet. She ran down the main staircase as quietly as she could to avoid the wrath of her father. He thoroughly disapproved of female exertion, and it often seemed to violate. She stifled a giggle at the sound of Graham puffing behind her. Even in her stuffy clothes, she could outrun him easily. I just got a text from the person I started this channel for. You better not. Or else. This is so stupid. Even in her stuffy clothes, she could outrun him easily, and to think that only last night he boasted about wanting to go to war. Pigs had a greater chance of flying, and anyways, he was only 15, a year younger than Violet, and therefore far too young. It was for the best. Really, nearly all the men in the village had gone, and half of them had died, or so Violet had overheard, along with the butler, the footman, and the gardener's apprentice. Besides, Graham was her brother. She didn't want him to die, she supposed. I feel that about my sister sometimes. "Give it here," Graham hissed. Turning around, she saw that his round face was pink with effort and fury. He was angry because she'd stolen his Latin workbook and told him that he declined all his feminine nouns incorrectly. "Shan't," she hissed back, clutching the workbook to her chest. "You don't deserve it. You put amor instead of arbor, for heaven's sake." At the bottom of the staircase, she scowled at one of the many portraits of father that hung in the wall. What should be hung on the wall? I'm gonna say hung on the wall. Then turned left, weaving through the wood-paneled corridors before bursting into the kitchens. "What are you playing at?" barked Miss Kirkby. Fun name. Gripping a meat cleaver in one hand and the pearly carcass of a rabbit in the other. "Could have chopped me finger off." I gotta say that, don't I? "Could have chopped me finger off." "Sorry," Violet shouted as she wrenched open the French windows, Graham panting behind her. They ran through the kitchen gardens, heavy with the scent of mint and rosemary, and then they were in her favorite place in the world, the grounds. She turned around and grinned at Graham. Now that they were outside, he had no chance of catching up with her, if she didn't want him to. He opened his mouth and sneezed. He had terrible hay fever. "Oh," she said. "Do you need a hanky?" "Shut up," he said, reaching for the book. She skipped neatly away. He stood there for a moment, heaving. It was a particularly warm day. A layer of gauzy cloud had trapped the heat and stiffened the air. Sweat trickled in Violet's armpits, and the skirt itched dreadfully, but she no longer cared. She had reached her special tree, a silver beech that Dinsdale, the gardener, said was hundreds of years old. Violet could hear it, humming with life behind her, the weevil searching for its cool sap, the ladybug trembling on its leaves. Okay, quick interception. Yeah, forgot an important plot point to the book. I think they're all witches, but like nature witches. So witches gone cottagecore. Hold on, let me readjust my pillow. This is so weird. I usually talk to myself a lot, but it's really weird talking to myself but technically talking to people, because I'm like super hyper aware of what I'm doing and saying, because I don't want to sound like a ding dong. I say ding dong a lot because I am a ding dong. I'm all nice and comfortable. Ooh, let me show this off, because why not? I know this isn't related, and I'm really sorry, but this is Louie. Louie's my lobster. My sister has a matching one. His name is Larry. They're brothers. It's big. Makes a great pillow. 10 out of 10 recommend for reading. Where was I? Humming with life behind her, the weevil searching for its cool sap, the ladybug trembling on its leaves, the damselflies, moths, and finches flitting through its branches. She held out her hand, and a damselfly came to rest on her paw. "How can you let that thing touch said Graham, who had finally caught up to her. "How can you let that thing touch you like that? Squash it." "I'm not going to squash it," Graham said. "Violet, it has as much right to exist as you or I do. And look, it's so pretty. The wings are rather like crystals, don't you think?" You're not normal," said Graham, backing away, "with your insect obsession. Father doesn't think so either." "I don't care a fig what Father thinks," Violet lied. "And I certainly don't care what you think, though, judging by your workbook. You should spend less time thinking about my insect obsession and more time thinking about Latin nouns." He lumbered forward, nostrils flaring, before he could make it within 5 paces of her. Ooh, excuse me. She flung the book at him, a little harder than she intended, and swung herself into the tree. Graham swore and turned back towards the hall, muttering. She felt a pang of guilt as she watched the angry retreat of his back. Things had always been like this between them. Once Graham had been her constant shadow. She remembered the way he used to crawl into her bed in the nursery to hide from a nightmare or a thunderstorm, burrowing against her until his breath was loud in her ears. He had all sorts of japes, ripping across the grounds until her knees were black with mud, marveling at the tiny silver fish in the beck, the red-breasted flutter of a robin, until that awful summer's day, a day not unlike this one. In fact, with the same honey-colored light on the hills and the trees, she remembered the two of them lying on the grass behind the beech tree. I read that as one long sentence. I don't know if it makes sense. Maybe I'm only going to do this one tonight. I'm kind of sleepy. Brooding in meadow thistle and dandelions. She had been 8, Graham only 7. There were bees somewhere calling out to her, beckoning. She had wandered over to the tree and found the hive, hanging from a branch like a nugget of gold. The bees glimmering, circling. She drew closer, stretched out her arms, and grinned as she felt them land. The tickle of her tiny legs against her skin. She had turned to Graham, laughing at the wonder that shone from his face. "Can I have a go?" he said, eyes wide. She hadn't known what would happen. She sobbed to her father later as his cane flashed through the air towards her. Oh. Maybe some child bees? I don't know. We'll see. You know, I did hear there was actually a trigger warning for this, or I read one on Goodreads. Yeah, maybe I should look into that. Probably should start mentioning beforehand. Whoopsie. She saw only Graham screaming as Nanny Metcalf rushed inside, the stings on his arm glowing pink. Father's cane split her palm open, and Violet felt it was less than she deserved. After that, Father sent Graham to boarding school. Now he only came home for holidays and grew more and more unfamiliar. She knew deep down that she shouldn't taunt him, so she was only doing it because as much as she couldn't forgive herself for the day of the bees, she couldn't forgive Graham either. He'd made her different. Violet shook the memory away and looked at her wristwatch. It was only 3 p.m. Ooh. I look so bad when I yawn. She had finished her lessons for the day, or rather, her governess, Miss Poole, had admitted defeat. Hoping she wouldn't be missed for at least another hour, Violet climbed higher, enjoying the rough warmth of bark under her palms. In the hollow between 2 branches, she found the hairy seed of the beechnut. It would be perfect for her collection. The windowsill of her bedroom was lined with such treasures: the gold spiral of a snail shell, the silken remains of a butterfly's cocoon. Grinning, she sewed the beechnut in the pocket of her skirt and kept climbing. Soon she was high enough to see the whole of Orton Hall, which, with its sprawling stone buildings, rather reminded her of a majestic spider lurking on the hillside. Higher still, and she could see the village. Crow's Beck on the other side of the fells. It was beautiful, but something about it made her feel sad. It was like looking out over a prison. A green, beautiful prison with birdsong and damselflies in the glowing amber waters of the beck. But a prison nonetheless, for Violet had never left Orton Hall. She had never been to Crow's Beck. "But why can't I go?" she used to ask Nanny McCalf when she was younger, as the nurse set off for her Sunday walks with Miss Kirkby. "You know the rule," Nanny McCalf would murmur, a glint of pity in her eyes. "Your father's orders." But as Violet reflected, knowing a rule was not the same as understanding it. For years she assumed the village was rife with anger. She imagined pickpockets and cutthroats lurking behind thatched cottages. This only enhanced its allure. Last year, she badgered Graham into giving her details. "I don't know what you're getting so worked up about," he grimaced. "The village is as dull as anything. There isn't even a pub." Sometimes Violet wondered whether Father was trying to protect her from the village. Violet wondered whether Father wasn't trying to protect her from the village, whether it was in fact the other way around. In any case, her seclusion would soon come to an end of sorts. In 2 years, when she turned 18, Father planned to throw a big party for her coming out, then hoped she would catch the eye of some eligible young man, allured to be perhaps, and swap this prison for another one. That's sad. I could not imagine having to do that. "You'll soon meet some dashing gentleman who'll whisk you off your feet," Nanny Metcalf was always saying. Violet didn't want to be whisked. What she actually wanted was to see the world, the way Father had when he was young. She had found all sorts of geography books and atlases in the library, books about the Orient full of steaming rainforests and mouths the size of dinner plates, ghastly things according to Father, and about Africa where scorpions glittered like jewels in the sand. Yes, one day she would leave Ordenhall and travel the world as a scientist. A biologist, she hoped, or maybe an entomologist, something to do with animals anyway, which in her experience was far preferable to humans. Nanny Metcalf often spoke of the terrible fright Violet had given her when she was little. She had walked into the nursery one night to find a weasel of all things in Violet's cot. "I screamed blue murder," Nanny Metcalf would say. "There you were, right as rain, and that weasel curled up next to you, purring like a kitten." It was just as well that Father never learned of this incident. As far as he was concerned, animals belonged on one's plate or mounted on one's wall. That's sad. I don't like that. The only exception to this rule was Cecil, his Rhodesian ridgeback, a fearsome beast he had beaten into viciousness over the years. Why are we beating our dogs? What's up with that? Violet was forever rescuing all manner of small creatures from his slobbering jaws, most recently a jumping spider that now resided in a hat box under her bed, lined with an old petticoat. She had named him her. It was rather hard to tell Goldie, for the colorful stripes on his legs. Nanny Metcalf was sworn to secrecy, though there were lots of things Nanny Metcalf hadn't told her either, Violet reflected later as she dressed for dinner. After she changed into a soft linen frock, the offending wool skirt discarded on the floor, she turned to the looking glass. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Her eyes were deep and dark, quite unlike Father's and Graham's watery blue ones. Violet thought her face quite strange looking, what with the unsightly red mole on her forehead, but she was proud of those eyes, and of her hair, which was dark too, with an opalescent sheen not unlike the feathers of the crows that lived in the trees surrounding the hall. "Do I look like my mother?" Violet had been asking for as long as she could remember. There were no pictures of her mother. All she had was an old necklace with a dented oval pendant. The pendant had a W in it, and she asked anyone who'd listen if her mother's name had been Winifred or Wilhelmina. Was she called Wallace? She'd asked Father once, having seen the name on the front of his newspaper. He sent a bewildered Violet to her room without any dinner. Okay, all she did was ask a question about her mom that you refused to tell her anything about, and you sent her to bed with no dinner? What is up with that? Nanny Metcalf was just as unhelpful. "Can't quite recall your mom," she said. "I was not long arrived when she passed." They met at the May Day Festival in 1925, Miss Kirkby would offer, nodding sagely. She wore the May queen, being so pretty. They were very much in love. Don't ask your father about it again, or you'll get a right whipping. Again, just asking questions. These crumbs of information were hardly satisfactory as a child. Violet wanted to know so much more. Where did her parents marry? Did her mother wear a veil, a flower crown? She pictured white stars of hawthorn to match a delicate lace dress. And did father blink away tears as he promised to have, and to hold until death did them part? In the absence of any real facts, Violet clung to this image until she became certain that it had really happened. Yes, her father had loved her mother desperately, and death had done them part. She had a shadowy idea that their mother had died giving birth to Graham. That's why he couldn't bear to talk about it. But occasionally something would blur the image in Violet's head, like a ripple disturbing the surface of a pond. One night when she was 12, she'd been foraging for jam and bread in the pantry when Nanny McCalf and Miss Kirkby walked into the kitchens with the newly employed Miss Pole. She'd heard the scrapings of chairs on stones and the great creak of the ancient kitchen table as they sat down, then the pop and clink of Miss Kirkby opening a bottle of sherry, filling their glasses. Violet had frozen mid-chew. How are you finding it so far, dear? Nanny McCalf had asked. Miss Pole, well, Lord knows I'm trying, but she seems such a difficult child, Miss Pole had said. I spent half the day looking for her, as she tears around the ground, getting grass stains all over her clothes, and she... Here, Miss Pole took an audible deep breath. She talks to the animals, even the insects. Okay, there's nothing wrong with talking to animals. I do it. It's cool. But I'm also, majoring to work with animals, so maybe that's why. There was a pause. I suppose you think I'm ridiculous, Miss Pole had said. Oh, no, dear, said Miss Kirkby. Well, we'd be the first to tell you that there's something different about the child. She's quite... How did you put it, Ruth? Uncanny. Nanny McCalf said. No wonder, Miss Kirkby continued. What the mother being... How she was... The mother? Miss Pole asked. She died, didn't she? Yes, awful business, said Nanny McCalf. Just after I arrived. Didn't have a chance to know her before that, though. She were a local lass, Miss Kirkby said, from Crowsbeck way. The master's parents would have been furious, but they'd passed just the month before the wedding. His older brother, too. Coach accident it was, very sudden. There was a sharp intake of breath from Miss Pole. What, and they still went ahead with the wedding? Was Lady Aries in the family way? Miss Kirkby made a non-committal noise before continuing. He was very taken with her, I say that much. At first, anyway. A rare beauty she were, and so much like the young lady, not just in looks. How do you mean? Another pause. Well, she were... What Ruth said. Uncanny. Strange. Alright, that's the end of chapter 2. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which way my bookmark is because the very faded numbers face the page I'm on. But yeah, Weyward, Emilia Hart, chapter 2, done. So far I think it's gonna be a good read. I need to look in to see if there's some upsetting content in this book, and if so, I'll probably start doing a little warning in the descriptions for the chapters, just to steer clear for people. Yeah, but thank you for watching. I hope everyone has a good rest of their day or night or whatever time zone you're in. I hope it's a good one. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you for watching is what I meant. Bye-bye.